Over the past 3 years, I've shown autographs from quite a few Red Sox players who had stories about their time playing with Ted Williams. But only today's man of the moment can say for 3 seasons he batted cleanup behind the splinted splinter, and in one of those seasons hit more home runs than the living legend. Getting back to my holiday-themed episodes, Dick Gernert and his wife Patricia were married in 1955 on Christmas Eve, and was about to start his 4th season with the Red Sox. This is what I imagine what it was like for the Gernerts over the years at any gathering. 'Tis the season, so let's say at a Christmas party. People are getting tipsy and it's getting a little loud. You're ready to go. You've heard enough from a ex-ball player who's been going on about his time in the majors and the big leaguers he played with, leaving out the part where he watched from the bench for a cup of coffee. From across the room, your wife sees you're ready to leave. She wanders over and waits for the right moment, then says, "Honey, it's time to go. I hear you gentlemen talking baseball. Dickie, did you tell them about playing on the Red Sox with Ted?" "No, I didn't." The ex-ball player blurts out, "You played in the majors too?" "Yeah, I played a few years in Boston." "See you guys. Merry Christmas, everybody." It takes a minute, then the ex-player makes the connection, turns to the host of the party and says, "He played with Ted Williams?" The host goes, "That's my neighbor, Dick Gernert. He batted cleanup behind Ted Williams for 3 years." Dick knows the routine. It's been that way for a while now. Nod to the wife, finish your drink, and be ready to leave. So once the party finds out you played with Ted Williams, you don't spend the rest of the night fielding questions. I can only imagine for the next 65 years of his life, Richard Edward Gernert would have to pick and choose his moments when to reminisce with partygoers. His nickname? Monk. But I figured the ladies probably called him Dickie. Maybe not. He signed my dad's autograph book, Dick, so that's what I will call him. Monk was 6'3" and listed at 209, but I'll round it up to 210. He made his MLB debut in 1952. Why was he called Monk? I don't know. Born in 1928 in the great state of Pennsylvania, Reading, Pennsylvania to be exact, known as Baseball Town, or Pretzel City. And he rekindles my theme on ball players who hail from hillbilly country. And as Peter Griffin points out, Pennsylvania is America's northernmost hillbillies. Another player who passed away in the same town he was born. Roots. And like most hillbillies, they live in the same town their whole life, unless they can play sports or play music, like the hillbilly cat, Elvis. As a freshman in 1944, Dick Gernert helped his Greg Post American Legion team win the title while attending Reading High School, where he was schoolmates with Vic Wertz, who was 3 years older, with the two becoming Red Sox teammates a decade later. Dick played the 3 main sports, and as they say, he was a standout athlete and was a star on the basketball team, and later named Outstanding Senior Athlete of the school, graduating in 1947 and accepting a basketball scholarship from Temple University, where he also played on the Owls football and baseball teams, eventually getting a bachelor's degree from the school. But he did switch schools after his freshman year when lured away by Harold Buckwalter to attend Northern State University in South Dakota, where he played basketball for the Wolves under Coach Ed Pesaresi, who was also a manager for a semi-pro baseball team in Nova Scotia. So for 2 summers, Dick Gernert hit the north, playing in the Nova Scotia Senior Baseball League, where he quickly became a local hero while playing for the Kentville Wildcats. There were 2 particular at-bats that made him a local legend. One game, he hit the ball so hard it went over the left field wall and landed in an open boxcar that was headed down the rails to Halifax. The other unforgettable at-bat was during an exhibition game against the House of David team. On the first pitch, Dick smashed the ball over the left field wall for a home run. The umpire said time had been called before the pitch was thrown. What could the college boys say? Not much. What could he do? He could hit the next pitch over the wall for a home run, and that's what Dick Gernert did on the very next pitch. The House of David baseball team were made up of players from a religious commune in Michigan who were not affiliated with any league and became famous through barnstorming. Their religious practice of not cutting their hair or shaving made them stand out, and people called them the Jesus Boys. They attracted huge crowds between 1920 and 1950 and were very good, taking on all comers, including MLB teams. They did this in order to raise funds and spread their faith, and they were way ahead of their time by having black players on their team. This made them different than any other ball club anywhere. and decades before any player would sport a mustache or play with long hair. The 21-year-old was asked to try out with the Boston Red Sox, and before the start of the 1950 season was signed by their scout, Charlie Wagner, himself a Reading native and former Red Sox pitcher. They started him out in West Coast on the San Jose Red Sox for a few weeks, Class C California League, before being sent back to Pennsylvania to play with the Scranton Miners, Class A Eastern League, playing alongside Piper Davis and another All-Star, pitcher Frank Sullivan. For the final month of the season, Dick Gernert was promoted to the Red Sox top farm team, the AAA Louisville Colonels in the American Association League, who were loaded with MLB talent, including Jimmy Pearsall. The entire 1951 season was spent back down in Scranton, playing well enough to get invited to the Red Sox 1952 spring training camp along with Ted Lepsio and Jimmy Pearsall. All three made the team, but those two sat while Dick Gernert was the Red Sox starting first baseman, playing in over 100 games, with the rookie hitting 19 home runs and then hit 21 in 1953. But the following two seasons saw his MLB career stalled, playing in only a handful of games for Boston while dealing with health issues, including hepatitis, forcing him down to the minors for the majority of the 1954 and 55 seasons, rejoining the Red Sox as a utility player in 1956, again playing in over 100 games. For the next 3 seasons, he was Boston's starting first baseman, batting cleanup behind Ted Williams. In 1958, Dick Gernert led the American League in putouts, assists, and double plays turned for a first baseman. After the 58 season, Boston traded Jimmy Pearsall to the Cleveland Indians for their first baseman, Vic Wertz, and outfielder Gary Gager. The two guys attended Reading High School, would share first base duties for 1959, and ironically, the guy Dick went to school with would eventually take over his position at first base. And after the season, Boston decided to go with Vic Wertz at first base. So on November 21st, 1959, Dick Gernert was part of the first interleague trade without waivers in MLB history, when the Red Sox traded him to the Chicago Cubs for their first baseman, Jim Marshall, and pitcher Dave Hillman. Dick played in 52 games for the Cubs before being bought by the Detroit Tigers, and was still with the Tigers to start 1961, then traded to the Cincinnati Reds for pitcher Jim Baumer. Dick got into 40 games with the Reds and played a key role in the Reds winning the NL pennant with his clutch pinch hitting down the stretch. Too bad in the World Series he was 0 for 4 as a pinch hitter, and the Yankees beat Cincinnati in 5 games. After the season, Dick was taken by the Reds by the Houston Colt 45s in the 1961 expansion draft. He played in 10 games, then released. And at the age of 33, his time in the majors was over, and played the rest of the season with the Tacoma Giants in the PCL, knocking out 20 homers, tied for the team lead, playing alongside a young Gaylord Perry and an old Dusty Rhodes. Dick's final 2 seasons playing ball were spent back home in Pennsylvania, where he played Double-A ball with the Reading Red Sox and a couple of youngsters, Rico Petrocelli and Reggie Smith. During his 15 years of pro ball between 1950 and 1964, Dick Gernert played in exactly 1,600 games, 11 seasons in the Big Show, playing in 835 games and knocking out 103 home runs. Retired from playing, but not from baseball, Dick would scout for 4 MLB teams, managing the minors for the Washington Senators and Texas Rangers, later hired as Rangers' first base coach under Frank Lucchesi. From there, Dick was hired by the New York Mets and for 3 years was director of player development for their farm system, and later their special assignment scout. Over the decades, Mr. Gernert was inducted into a few halls of fame: the Berks chapter of the Pennsylvania Sports Hall of Fame, the Reading Baseball Hall of Fame, and the Reading High School Sports Hall of Fame, and would find himself on many baseball cards over the years. After his baseball traveling days were over, Mr. Gernert became a teacher who taught history and PE, with many accounts from former students praising the man that some players called Monk, but the students called Mr. Gernert. He passed away at home a week after Thanksgiving in 2017 at the age of 89. Dick Gernert spent most of the 1950s with the Red Sox and was an opening day starter 3 times for the club. The first in 1953 against the Philadelphia Athletics, where he had a great game in the win. In 1954, playing with Jackie Jensen and Jimmy Pearsall on the starting opener, and his last opening day start was 1957, batting cleanup behind Ted Williams, who once said this about his teammate Dick Gernert: "He is kind of a hero up there in Nova Scotia, isn't he?" And years later, Ted said this: "A hell of a guy, Pretty good hitter, just a great guy. Dick Gernert was a powerful right-handed batter who was signed by Boston to take advantage of the left field wall called the Green Monster at Fenway Park. He was not a fan of the wall, saying, "I hit a lot of balls into the gaps and into right field. I think they wanted me to pull the ball. I tried to pull and my hitting didn't improve because of that. I think if I stayed the way I was when I came into the big leagues, I might have been a much better hitter," unquote. That's always tough to say and to hear yourself say it. As an athlete, looking back, to have words of regret about your career, going against your gut instinct and instead listening to the coaches in charge who you assume know better than you. Besides, you want to keep your job and stay in the majors so you don't make waves. But on the bright side, Dick Gernert can always say that for 8 straight years he was on the Boston Red Sox. Okay, at a time when they weren't very good, but Dick Gernert knows he could have been on worse teams. And when he stepped up to the plate, in theory, there were 15 other teams he could have been on. But for 3 seasons, he had the incredible good fortune that when he stepped up to the plate, he was batting cleanup behind the one and only Ted Williams.